Good morning, everybody. I toast to you and all you do. I had to find a new spot to set up. It's crazy how long it takes to get the camera angle in some way decent. Someday I'll upgrade and get some fancy recording stuff. But anyways, so I'm in the front yard today. It's my neighbor's tree. It's really pretty. It's a honey locust tree. It's got really little leaves. Anyways, so I did a great interview yesterday with Missy and William from Mountain Ancestors Grove, and they're great. They're a great clergy couple. I love how they balance each other out. And she's just, she said so many things in our interview that I was like, I'm gonna have to write this down and quote you because it was so beautifully said. And then he comes in with this like profound wisdom of like, so one of the things that was brought up yesterday, that they both kind of hinted on and we talked about a little bit throughout our interview, was the newness of modern paganism. So we have this term neo-paganism, and that is, I guess, yeah, that's what it is, neo-paganism. But I've never really liked that term. I don't know why. I just don't. If we'll feel like we could just be pagan, why can't we just be pagan? But in this conversation that we were having, they brought up this fantastic point about awakening into this new religion where we are in essence building it. So it's been mind-blowing all night and all this morning, and it's just kind of like, I used to joke that when I was working with Hesperides Garden that my goal was to be the Vatican of the pagan community. And I joked, but we're all the people that were in that organization, we were all anti-church. We saw that the church was doing just as much harm as it was good. And it wasn't, the good that was being done was by individual clergy, and then the bad that was being done was like by the church itself. So we were pretty anti-church. So the whole being the Vatican of pagan was like this joke of, the paganism needs some kind of organized leadership to like come down and say this is the pagan religion. But we're all like anti-church, so it's one of those, whatever. But until having this conversation yesterday, I had not really put into real contemplation the newness of the religion. So there are a lot of people out there who call themselves reconstructionists. So they're reconstructing ancient religion in modern context. And many pagans are doing that. And I think that's where that's where this foundation is coming from. And then Missy said the most amazing thing about, paganism, and the beauty of paganism and building a pagan community is that as a pagan, we honor and support our differences, and that we can come together with our differences and honor each other and be together and all of that stuff. And that this is the religion that we are creating. Which if you look historically, that's not Reconstructionism. So in that essence, and in this idea of creating this new religion, which, you'll have to watch the interview. William is very articulate, and he has these great things that he cannot contain inside his brain. And so I didn't even realize that this is how this interview was going to go, and it just turned into this like, oh my God. I told him in the interview, I'm like, we're going to have to do some more talking because this is, but the whole, okay, Sorry, it's just so much in my brain right now that it's hard to put out into words. And I just wanted to get this out there and start sharing this so that we as a community can start discussing this, because in reality, this is what we are doing. So, if we were to look at the pagan religion as a person, as an entity, as a soul, it lived its life thousands of years ago. And then there was this ascension of religion, and we had Zoroastrianism and Christianity and Judaism and all of these different religions born out of that time awakening. And paganism kind of got pushed to the back. Like, that is of our ancestors. This is the new cool thing. So in that entity, it was like paganism grew old and died. And then monotheism has taken rise and is in its, for a religion, I guess, and a religious entity, in its usefulness. I don't even know where it would be at 2,000 years. I mean, it's really not that old in the sense of religion, seeing as how humans have, I mean, we've found remains in the United States from 10,000 years ago, plus that, and that's just here, and that's not even, all life began over there by Africa, in that cradle of life right there. And then, so even when you think about how long it took for humans to get from there and to spread up and spread out and to come across and down, okay, so religion has been a part of the human existence since the beginning. And yes, we used it to explain the unknown and this and that. And now, in our modern sense, even though we have science and technology and we know, like, why the sun rises and sets, we still have this faith in this energy that we can't see and we can't explain. And there are things that are, why did the glucose molecule turn into a circle? There are other molecules that have almost identical compositions, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, okay? So it's those little things. How did organization come out of that chaos? And it's that energy that we are calling to, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so in the transition of the spiritual entities, I'm sorry, I told you, like, my mind blown, the dark moon with all of that, and then it's overload in this brain. So, okay, so as a religious entity, paganism got old, and it pretty much died. I mean, it didn't die, but it did get old, and I think that we do actually have to see it as getting old, and it died, and we have to let go of that. And now it has been reborn. And it was reborn out of this weird mutation of Christianity and early Christianity and, pagans that were still practicing. So, like, African pagans and archaeological evidence and all of that stuff kind of out of the early 20s and 30s. And then it started to get more popular. And by the 60s and 70s, it was even more popular. And now it's a real thing. And so it's like this reborn. It was like a baby and it didn't know exactly what it was. And it is growing and being reborn. And now it's in this adolescent state where it has developed and grown. And then we're like deciding, what do we want to be when we grow up? And so when you see it in that adolescent state, and you're like, it makes sense why we can't find long-standing organizations and books that say these are the rules and general terms and all of that stuff. So you have to, with that in my brain and just thinking about that, it brings on this crazy thing. It was like meant to be, because then my neighbor came outside and all kinds of other stuff. So hello again for you. It's like I never went away. Anyways, so in this whole evolution of religion and the pagan religion itself, it's just this crazy thing where, as a religion, as if we were looking at it as an entity, it is at that point in its identity of, what do I want to be when I grow up? And what am I going to do from this point forward? How do we take these ancient myths and modernize them so that they can be put to use, so that we can learn these lessons that need to be learned and, grow this religion? And so, like I said earlier, Missy brought up this great point about celebrating our differences, and I think that's a really important foundation to build off this future religion. And then William brought up he's one of those honest, brutal, killjoy kind of guys that you want to talk to because you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. But he's like, yeah, so right now, and the state that paganism is, it's more of like this aesthetic paganism that you get this quick fix, you get this quick high from, you're like, oh, it feels good. But there's no like roots or deepness to it. It's, because that's the hard part. And so that's kind of where we're at, is that we're at that point where now we're in this hard part and we have to really dig in our boots and do the work and, to create this grown-up religion, not for grown-ups, but like from adolescence to grown-up and that spiritual entity evolution, that is supportive of the people and rounded and all of the things that a religion needs to be in order to really help the community and to do that. So it's like that nitty-gritty work that needs to be done. And that's what we are doing now as both spiritual leaders and practitioners, as we are doing that. And I had kind of started to make a little bit of a video about it yesterday, but there was just too much going on. But in that, we are trying to create this foundation. It's just interesting on where people are getting their information on what paganism is and all of that kind of stuff. So as you're perusing and looking for this information, you have to keep in mind that as a religion, as a context, I hold this and I practice this, this is a very youthful, like, early religion. This is in a state of youthfulness, and it is we who are practicing who are creating that. So as you're perusing through the internet and you're like, none of this stuff makes sense, or none of this stuff is right, and you really feel that, then that's fine. I feel that all the time. And that's just part of learning and growing and becoming accustomed to and challenging those boundaries. We have these archaic and ancient and all of these kind of examples that we can look to. Like, oh, this is how they honored Vesta, and this is what they did for that, and this is what they believed. But translating that into modern can be really difficult. And so as we look to our spiritual leaders and you look to find a guide or a mentor or a whatever, make sure that you're finding someone who is building that foundation of, community and religion. And I'm sorry, that just really brings me to this. I get into this argument all the time about how paganism is not a religion. And that's that adolescence neener, I feel, of like, I don't want to conform to these boundaries, and therefore that is not a religion. My paganism is not a religion. And however, yeah, I'm sure there's a large group of people who really feel that way. I like to ask people when I'm doing counseling or working with them, and that's where they are at on the whole situation. Well, what is it with the word religion that you have a problem with? And a lot of times that comes back to some kind of previous abuse or problems that they've had with religion or the church or a religious person, who they then internalize that connection. And it's not that they are not religious and they are not faithful and they do not practice being pagan. It's just that word has triggered some things. So I challenge those who say paganism is not a religion. Why? And I ask the leaders in the community, what are we doing to establish this as a religion and for the future? What foundation are we building? And what is it that we want to move forward? You see a lot of groups that don't survive long term, and it's typically because of petty issues that build up and build up and build up. I had been in the coven I was in it's still a coven, but been in this coven for 15 years now. I've been friends with the one lady for almost 25 years. And then there was just all of these little things and little things and little things, because there's not this set doctrine of this is how it works and this is what we're doing. So everybody is trying to do this or that. And when you get somebody so hooked on the ego, you just get to a brick wall, and then there's a point. And, so she had to take the wall with her. Anyways, but you see that in a lot of pagan organizations, because that ego comes in. So this is another part of my conversation last night, is that in our youthful state of this adolescence religion, we have created this very ego-driven kind of faith, I guess, where you see a lot of people who are like, well, I can't practice like that, or I can't do it like that, or blah, 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 or whatever, and blah. And so we have to move away from that shift. I feel like that's part of that adolescence, is that our faith and our pagan faith has allowed us to build that ego, because we were building the ego of paganism. And so now that it has its youthful ego, I think that it's time to like put some more action to that and all that stuff. So now that I feel like it hasn't been that long, but again, this is just like one of those things. It's like really makes you think. So again, I challenge you to think about those concepts. Think about your ideology of religion. Think about what you would want. If you were to pick up a book that says this is the pagan religion, what would it say? Oh my God, that just, like, my brain isn't going to be able to stop. So, comment, tell me, what would your book say? What would be the key things that your book says? What would paganism really facilitate to you? And I'm not talking about, what gods you would call to, or, how you would set up your altar. I'm saying is like a religious, what would be the tenets of this religion? What would be the principles of the pagan religion? What would be the pillars of the community? Like, what would it be that we all stand on? Okay, so we have the pillar of nature and natural cycles. I think that there is a general, reincarnation pillar. Ascension maybe is a kind of, depending on, so it's like a unique pillar. It kind of wiggles. But what are the tenets of paganism? What are we doing? What is this religion going to be for our children and our grandchildren and the people in the future when they look back and they're like, oh my God, in the year 2000, the century of 2000, when paganism really blossomed into this global thing? Because as you see, it is a growing religion. It is more and more people are coming. It's recognized. I filled out some paperwork the other day with my doctor's office, and paganism was on the list. I was like, yes, I'm checking the box. Yes! I meant to ask my husband if he checked the box too, even though he's agnostic. I'm like, check that box, please. Just check the box. I checked the box other. I'm American. I'm an American pagan. I am not all of these things that they put on the list down here where it says other. I don't want to, I couldn't believe it when I was filling out my census. Anyways, wait, let's not talk about all that. That's a whole nother rant. I'm not going to go on another rant. Please tell me what it is that your pagan tenets would be. Let's talk about this. Let's open this line of communication. Let's make this the thing we do right now. So, I hope everybody has a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know the interview that I did with Missy and William is like 45 minutes long, but I'd highly recommend watching it. They are both just beautifully articulate people. They run a great church over there. They have an amazing library if you're local to the Longmont area and you're pagan. Even if you're not Druid, they're really open. If you're curious about Druid, they're a great resource. And yeah, they're just they're some of those people who are just super educated and super smart, and they love to read, and they're really into learning and sharing that knowledge. So they're just great people. So I would definitely watch that video. Go check them out. You could go to FortCollinsPaganPride.org to find all of their links, or I'm pretty sure theirs is MountainAncestry.org, but they're great over there. So check out the interview, check out them, like and subscribe, do all that stuff. I hope everybody has a fantastic Thursday. Tomorrow we start school, so it should be interesting. I hope everybody has a great day, and I toast to you and all you do, and I hope you have a blessed day.